Hey everyone, I'm Jaymes Longstrom. I'm one of the coaches with Team Biolayne. And in this video, I want to talk about the time course for muscle growth. So recently I made a post on my personal page titled, "How long does it take to see muscle growth?" And a lot of people found it interesting, so I wanted to expand upon that a little bit here in this video. So first of all, factors that are going to determine how fast we build muscle will include things like genetics. Genetics play a huge role in anything related to changes in our body, physiological changes. So some people just have the better genetics to be able to build muscle more quickly, while others unfortunately don't. Another big factor is going to be training status. So those who are untrained have a greater potential for muscle growth because they are further away from their genetic ceiling for muscle growth potential. So trained lifters are closer to that genetic ceiling, so it's going to be more difficult for them to build muscle, and it will take them longer to get to that genetic ceiling for muscle growth potential. Another factor is age. So obviously older people are going to have a more difficult time to build muscle, while younger people will be able to build muscle a little bit more quickly. Another factor is sex. So males and females, when you break down muscle growth in terms of relative body weight, it's fairly comparable, but men do have a greater absolute increase in muscle growth. And the last factor that's going to determine how quickly you can gain muscle is your nutritional status. So if you're in a calorie deficit, you aren't going to be able to gain as much muscle, or your rate of muscle growth is going to be less compared to if you were in a calorie surplus. And even the calorie surplus will determine. So if you're in a greater calorie surplus, you're going to be able to build more muscle more quickly versus being closer to that maintenance level of calories. So when we look at the research, there's a study by Hubel et al. 2015 that shows people can increase their muscle by as much as 50% of where they started, where some people actually lose muscle. This has led to terms called responders and non-responders. I don't necessarily prefer the term non-responders. I think low responders would be a better term, because those who are low responders, those people who actually lost muscle, they can still build muscle. It just takes more consistent time and effort to build muscle. So aside from those individual physiological factors that may contribute to our rate of muscle growth, the reason why we may see differences in the rate of muscle growth between individuals is related to how we actually measure muscle growth. So when you're talking about direct measures of muscle growth, you're going to commonly see instruments like MRI or B-mode ultrasound being the two primary instrumentation for measuring muscle growth. MRI is definitely the gold standard and the more accurate method, but that method is also very expensive and a lot of labs don't have access to that. So you're going to see B-mode ultrasound be the most common because it is more accessible and it's fairly accurate compared to MRI. So how quickly can you expect to see muscle growth? Well, when you look at studies that include a direct measurement like B-mode ultrasound or MRI, there is a study by Ogasawara et al. 2012 that showed muscle growth in as little as 1 week. However, most studies are going to detect muscle growth in somewhere around 4 weeks, but that amount of muscle growth is pretty minimal. I mean, you're talking like a few millimeters or a few centimeters squared, which may not be detectable by somebody with an untrained eye because it's so minimal. They need sophisticated equipment to be able to actually measure that amount of muscle growth. And generally, when you look at training studies and muscle growth studies, you're going to see that people generally within an 8 to 12 week time frame, which is the most common time frame for training studies, you generally see people gain as much as about 3.5 to about 4 pounds of lean body mass. So it's really not that much in about 8 to 12 weeks. Again, you may be able to notice it, but some people who don't have a trained eye to see those changes may not even notice a change in their actual muscle growth. So some people may be able to visually see an increase in muscle growth in as little as a few months, maybe 3 or 4 months. Whereas some people may not notice a change or an increase in their muscle growth for 6 months or more. Muscle growth is a very slow process. It takes a lot of time, dedication, and effort in your nutrition and your training, which is why I always advocate for longer periods spent in muscle growth phases, at least 6 months and up to a year or more. Muscle growth is like watching paint dry on the wall, so stay determined, stay committed, and stay focused on your end goal. Again, my name is Jaymes Longstrom, one of the coaches with Team Biolayne. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM. You can follow me on Instagram at Jaymes Longstrom, James with a Y. And if you have any coaching inquiries or any other specific questions that I can help you specifically with, shoot me an email to james@biolayne.com. Thank you.